Yes. Hello. How are you doing? All right. Yeah. Great. So this is my first Pycon UK, which is really cool. I was here last year at Django EU and had such an amazing time that I came back. And this venue is just beautiful. But one thing I know from going to conferences myself is it can kind of be a little bit daunting. So I've got a few questions for you, because I like to be interactive. How many of you have worked with PHP before? Put your hands up. Cool. How many people still work with PHP? A lot less. Yeah, we'll talk about that. And how many people here are new to Pycon UK? Cool. So I was here yesterday at the open day, and I didn't really talk to anyone until lunchtime, and lunchtime is about to happen. So I just want to take a few seconds in my session, because I get to dictate what goes on, and say hi to the person that you haven't spoken to that's like kind of within your vicinity. Yes, so say hello to each other. Go. Okay. I figured that. Cool. All right. Now that we have soundtrack working, haha. So yes, as our lovely host mentioned, I am a PHP developer at a Pycon, I know. I also work with WordPress, and even worse or better, depending on how you look at it, I work in enterprise. So I guess the question really is, why am I here? It doesn't seem to make sense. Well, I've been a web developer for 6 years now, and in that time, I kind of noticed a few things. I'm a rather observant person, for better or worse, one of my traits. I noticed that Python and PHP, as the two languages, could be considered siblings. They are both older than my career as a web developer. Python is older. It's 4 years older, to be exact. They both compile in C. They both make websites. I know Python can do more, but it's older. They're both easy to get started with. They both have really large communities. And more importantly, they both begin with P. When we look at the ecosystems, I'm going to talk about the PHP ecosystem in particular because, well, I don't really know that much about Python. I did do a course last year about at the Django EU conference, which was Python for PHP developers, and had a blast of a time. But that was the last time I touched Python. So we'll stick with the PHP. So in the ecosystem of PHP world, we have PHP internals, which is the core place where PHP adds more stuff to. I'm very, very technical, you can tell. We also have user groups. If you go to this URL, there is a lovely map which tells you all the PHP user groups in the world. It's kind of cool. I use it when I travel to find local user groups and meet the local people. It's really, really cool. We also have a user group that's called PHP Women, kind of similar to your Pi Ladies. We have PHP Mentoring. We have PHP Bridge. I know there's Railbridge, this is like an offshoot of an OS Bridge as well. But I'm not sure if there's a Python one. Some people can nod. Nope, no one's nodding. Okay, carry on. And there's lots of frameworks. Just like Python, there's loads of frameworks and content management systems. And out of that has spurred a group known as PHP Fig. And the Fig stands for Framework Interoperability Group, because they really like long words. And the one thing about PHP that's kind of is an advantage to Python is that it's easy and cheap to deploy. It's something that I didn't even realize until Daniela yesterday mentioned it in his intro talk. PHP often is called the gateway to programming, and it was definitely my gateway to programming. But it's also considered the Wild West. It's like one of those Wild West movies that you see with the Americans and the cowboys. It's romantic in parts and violent in others. There are competing events in the PHP world. We have lots and lots of community events, just like this one in the PHP community. But unfortunately, there has been a trend where organizers of these events get really competitive about which event is better than the other, either by flashiness, the amount of people that turn up, how big they can make it, how many tracks they have, how many international speakers. Oh, it's just boring. Anyway, it's just really not a nice place when you have the organizers competing each other. And I know half the time it's for S and giggles, but it's just, after a while, a little bit draining. We also have quite a few siloed communities. I mentioned that we have a lot of frameworks and CMSs in the PHP community, and one of those communities is WordPress. We are a CMS built on top of PHP. Yet, when I go to a PHP conference and I tell them I am a WordPress developer, people say, oh, commiserations, I feel sorry for you. Or even better, they just laugh in my face. And don't get me wrong, I totally understand why. But the reality of it is, WordPress is powering 27% of the web. That's not a small number in any feed. I know we're a bit crazy, but it's still a big number. And so when people tell me commiserations, I'm like, does your project do this? I don't think so. There's also things like PHP Women that I mentioned before, which in its current state, the nicest way I can put this is that it's dormant. Which is sad really, because I know there's a lot of people needing this service, yet they're not finding the resources and the support that they need. We also have PHP Bridge that I mentioned before, which until recently didn't have any volunteers and currently probably still doesn't have enough. And these are great community projects that are being left by the wayside or are very slow to start up. And let's go back to the PHP Fig. Now, Fig itself is interesting. Framework, interoperability, group. And if you look at that middle word, interoperability, and I did a quick Wikipedia, because obviously Wikipedia knows everything, and it's the answer to all things, it says, interoperability is the ability of different information technology systems and software applications to communicate, exchange data, and use the information that has been exchanged, which is pretty cool. So when the PHP Fig group, remember, it's got the word interoperability. I wish they used a smaller word for this. When they go out and create drama and arguments and big fights over their code of conduct, which I believe is still not even in, all you do is just get a ridiculous amount of PHP drama on Twitter, which is lovely to wake up to, considering that as the Europeans are waking up, the Americans are going to sleep. And all of this boils down to people. People like you, people like me. And I know, when we have a group of people, there will be politics. Sometimes it's good politics, and everyone gets on, and sometimes it's bad politics, and sometimes you just shake your head and go, I don't understand. Just like real politics. Relationships are like that. But when we are arguing on social media, when the PHP community especially are arguing on social media, then it always feels to me like my community, the one that I'm really proud of, because it's the one where I learned to be a web developer, I feel like we're hanging our dirty laundry out in public, and it's shameful. It's super shameful, and it's embarrassing, ultimately. So why am I sat here? Well, actually, I'm stood. Why am I stood here in front of you telling you about the worst of PHP? I mean, we're at a Python event. It's because, as an external person, as a visitor, all I see for the Python community is love. It's amazing. And when I come to a Python event and I meet Python people on my travels, all I get back is love. I go to lots of events. Like, I'm just addicted to communities and conferences and learning, so I just basically made a job out of it. It's quite good fun. And In that, I meet a lot of Python people, but I also meet a lot of other people. I once went to a F# community event in London, and again, I got the commiserations for being in PHP, because PHP is obviously the worst language on the world. But when I come to a Python event, when I came here last year, and I came here yesterday, all I got was cool, and a big smiley face from people who I'd never met before. Not a single person to this point has ever come up to me at a Python event and said commiserations for being a PHP developer. And it's so nice. So nice to know that I don't have to defend my job. Honestly, the Python community is the most helpful, friendly, and kind community I know in the whole of the tech space. And I go to a lot of tech events, so you should be proud of yourselves. But there's something I want to share with you, and why I've been talking about the PHP community is because when we go to events, a lot of the time we talk about soft skills. But it's not really soft skills we're talking about. For one, they're not soft, they're not easy. They're people skills. And people are harder than technology, because unlike technology, where it's either right or wrong or a bug, people are like just so many different things. This morning when Peter opened up Pycon UK, he mentioned John Pinner, how his motto was, by the people, for the people. By the community, for the community. Let me get this right. And I thought that really summed up lovely how we all do this together for each other. You are the community, but open source is not free. We all need to eat, and that costs money and time. And not only do we need to eat, we need to, most of us, I hope, would be paying bills as well, unless you're off the grid of some sort, probably have a house to maintain, families to look after, and this all costs money and time. Open source needs maintenance, and communities need sustaining. And it's something that I've noticed time and time again. In the PHP community, that's the one thing we're lacking, sustainability. But we're in a community where sustainability currently is great. You have lots of great volunteers, people just helping each other out. I've been sat in the command center room where all the organizers are working today, and just watching these volunteers who are not meant to be volunteering, not meant to be organizing, just picking up things, helping, coming in and out, ask questions, getting things done, asking what needs to be done. And then all of a sudden, for a moment, Peter stood up. He looked at Danielle and said, "Thank you." It was so funny. And then Danielle was sat down and was just like, "What do you mean?" And so Peter replied again, "Thank you." "What for?" "Just thank you." And it was the most beautiful, thing I just saw, because Danielle just got up and gave Peter a hug and said thank you back to him. And to me, that really did sum up the Python community, just everyone pitching in. Sharing is caring. One of your organizers today told me this, and it was funny, because it's true. If we're going to sustain a great Python community, then I think it's also a good idea to be aware of what's going on elsewhere. In the WordPress community, every year there is a talk given by Matt Mullenweg, who is one of our co-founders. He had this thing in 2014, which he then nicknamed the 5 for the Future. Now, he wrote a blog post, and it's quite a good blog post, so do feel free to read it, but I've taken a summary, and the most important part of it really is that he basically advocated to sustain the WordPress community. Organizations should be dedicating 5% of their people to be working on something to do with core. And when he means core, he means just the WordPress open source ecosystem. This is a good idea. We can't be relying on the same individuals because our lives, things happen. Even for me, I had a family emergency, which means that I will have to leave Pycon early, which I'm really gutted about, but life happens. If we take from our communities, from our open source communities, and want to keep them healthy, then we also have to give back. In his post, he also says, it's not just about code, but it's documentation, support forums, training, testing, translations, or whatever it may be. If you find a gap, fill it. So here I am in front of you, and what I really wanted to come to you today with was, I've seen how painful it is when there is no support. I've seen how painful it is when there is a lack of help. And I beg you and I urge you, before it's too late, to support your local communities, to support Python community wherever you may be. It's really easy. Just share what you have learned, whether it's a blog post, standing up here, even sharing what you have learned to fail at as much as your successes. Making sure that people know where that pothole is so that their car doesn't have to end up, going back to the garage. Asking questions. It's funny. In the PHP community, sometimes people are too scared to ask questions, but I keep on having to remind them. No question is too stupid. Now, there's a lot of you here today, and there's probably a lot of people that you don't know or you want to ask questions to. Just ask them. No question is too stupid. Also ask, how can I help? Now, I can't tell you how the Python community needs help right now, but there are people at this event which can tell you that. And if you don't have a local community, start one. Go in for coffee or go in for a brew with a bunch of people and just moaning about your clients and how you can't make something work in Python, PHP, or any language is group therapy that you get for free. And it's very, very good. So start a local community. And then if you look outside of the Python community, we have people coming into events, like myself, coming into Pycon, just see what's going on. I met someone yesterday who was a .NET developer, and I said to him, why are you here? And they replied, just because it's interesting to learn something new. And I was like, yes! And I get the suspicion that the Python community has a lot of these inbound people. But when I'm at the PHP conferences, and I'm at the WordPress events, and I'm at the Drupal events, I don't see many Python people. Now, I get it. The amount of people who've done work PHP and then is still doing PHP was quite a big difference when everyone put their hands up. And I get it. The PHP community is not the best place to be. In fact, it's kind of embarrassing, like I said before. But there's so much that the Python community has done right, has worked so hard to make their community the beautiful community that it currently is, that I think it would be a shame to not share that with other tech communities who are struggling. So if you are an organizer or you've tried something that made accessibility to your community a little bit easier, and you notice in another community that they're not doing that, there is absolutely nothing wrong with going to that community and mentioning and talking about your experiences in the Python community so they can duplicate, fork, and learn from your experiences. Maybe then the tech community as a whole will be improving. So there's one last thing. Whenever you're doing open source, no matter how you contribute back to the Python community or the Python language, it's quality, not quantity. DLOC, which is Welsh for thank you. Any questions?
We've got about 5 minutes to take any questions before we go for lunch. Any questions? Danielle?
Thank you very much for your kind words, Jenny. What are you going to be doing personally? Because you're a community manager in PHP or something like that. I'm not sure what your title is, but
Yeah.
you're an important person in doing this. What do you have up your sleeve to help PHP improve in the ways you've described?
So I do a lot of kind of wrangling and making, like, especially between PHP community and WordPress community, I get a lot of the core people together and make them basically sit down and have a cup of tea or a beer together so they can talk not over the internet, but actually face to face. So it's one of the things I do. I do a lot of mentoring of speakers and try and do a cross collaboration between groups. And I do various other things, but it's just really like I kind of take the temperature of the community and say, okay, what needs to be done and do I have the capacity to do that? So that's what I do. But one of the things I did do from last year was I saw that Django EU had a quiet room, which I was like, this is amazing. So when I organized WordCamp London this year, we had a quiet room, which was inspired by the Python community. And then I was hoping this week that I would be able to go to the teaching sessions and all the teaching stuff that you have organized at this event and see how that works as well. Because that's one thing that I would love to see, like the PHP community conferences have, like a teaching track, and also the WordPress community also have, because those are the two places I live in. But yeah, I'm always like coming back and like, so what else can I go and nab? It was also Django EU last year where I saw for the first time live captioners, which was amazing. There was an Icelandic person on stage who I couldn't understand a single word of. And it was on the open day, so I ended up just reading the screens, and it made the biggest difference. And that's why I just love live captioners. So I actually introduced WordCamp London this year with live captioners, and we got a lot of lashback. People didn't understand why. They didn't understand what the point was, and I was just like, I don't care how much it costs, we're having it. And after the event, though, people were like, this is amazing. I could understand accents. If I wasn't sure what was being said, I could just read it, and it was such a positive thing. And actually, from WordCamp London, that then this exact same live captioning team got sent to WordCamp Europe, which is our big European event. So this year was the first time that happened within Europe, and it was fantastic. And it's inspired a lot of the WordPress community to think about this, because obviously, especially with accents across Europe, there's so many. Just even in the UK, it's crazy. So it definitely helps, and I'm probably going to be back every year finding out what the Python community is up to and be like, yeah, so I'm just going to take this and take that. But I would love the Python community itself to come and talk at a WordCamp or at PHP events that I'm at and share this, because I think there's something valuable about someone talking about it from a first-person perspective and not from someone who's just come along and stolen all your ideas. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I didn't steal them, I just forked them, because we're open source.
Any more questions from the floor?
Thanks. Really interesting thoughts. Thanks. So I was a PHP developer, and now I guess I'm not a WordPress developer. I do that sometimes. Python developer. I'd be interested in your take on other things that you see, not just the PHP community, but generally things in PHP, like documentation, or how people learn, that you feel are done better than how you've seen them in Python.
I think it'd be really unfair for me to compare my experience between Python and PHP, because the reality of it is that my experience in Python is so little. I mean, like I said, the last time I wrote Python was a year ago at Django EU. And even when I was researching for this talk, actually, Python had it nailed on. There was so much documentation already there, and it was so easy to find the Python code of conduct. You have a software foundation, and it's really interesting about the structure that you have. PHP doesn't have a software foundation, but what it subgroups do is that Drupal has a foundation, and the WordPress foundation is only to protect the trademark. So we have a community team instead, which is completely different. So there's definitely things that could be learnt there. One thing I haven't noticed that Python community doesn't do is, and this is from, obviously, my very, very small experience, is speaker mentorships. I don't know if you do that, but it's something that in the WordPress community we do a lot of. So when you submit to speak at a conference, we try and encourage all our organizers in the WordPress community to have in their submission form whether you can, if you've spoken before, and whether you would like mentoring. And the mentoring is not just for first-time speakers, but also for repeat speakers as well, because everyone has like confidence issues about standing on stage. I just make it easy because I ramble and remember it. It's not going to kill me.
You mentioned that you go to a lot of other sort of events in various languages. Would you recommend some that maybe us as a community would like to attend that's out of our comfort zone?
I would say go to stuff that actually makes a difference to you yourselves. So I assume that you're writing HTML and CSS, so front-end conferences are definitely a great place to be. Design conferences are really interesting. I once watched a talk at a design conference, which I got dragged to by my team designer, which meant that I ended up watching a talk about the science of readability by John Tan, which was mind-blowing. I didn't realize there was so much science over what font and how big the lettering should be in the kernel. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to never, ever shout at a designer for shouting at me about CSS not being correct. But I think it's definitely interesting to go to like at least one a year, or even just a user group, to just kind of break the barriers and see what's going on. But yeah, considering everyone keeps on saying JavaScript is the new big thing, then maybe JavaScript. I obviously would love to see more Python people in the PHP community, but you'll probably learn what not to do rather than what to do.
Okay, and you mentioned that you sort of took or saw the closed captioning here and sort of took it to your event and that sort of propagated. Mm-hmm. What would you improve about or take from the events you've been to and improve Pycon? Or
I think the only thing I could imagine is I think the organizers here could wear a uniform t-shirt, but obviously the problem with that is that it costs money. So someone has to sponsor the t-shirts, and it's always about leveling up cost and reality. So as much as there's a lot of things that I think could help, I think that's the number one thing I would improve for next year, is probably just to make the organizers a bit more prominent so that people know who to ask for help. Okay, someone just get Daniela a shirt, okay? They can make shirts instead. If you can get, and I mean, if anyone can fundraise that, then that'd be great. Apart from that, I would probably say signage. It's sometimes a bit hard to get lost and know where the signage is. But signage, I learned, takes a lot of effort. And in fact, at WordCamp London, the signage costs more than the STTRs. So, yeah, it can quickly add up. And it's all about funding. As an organizer myself, I know it's all about a balancing act. So if you can dig deep into your pockets, or if you can help fix those problems, then you know where Daniela is.
One more question.
Hi, Jenny. I know you've been involved with the PHP Women group for a number of years. Mm-hmm. I'm a big fan. I've been a sponsor before and bought stuff. And I know there are excellent groups like Django Girls who are here and Transcode, etc., who provide safe places for women and other groups to get together and code and also talk to each other safely and everything. And I know PHP Women has been a safe place for similar events, but also tends to be much more general within the PHP community. It's not like Django Girls tends to be focused more around a safe place to get together and code Django, for example. It's kind of in the title. I know they do more and branch out. But I was wondering if you thought there was value in having a Python community group or endeavor for a general safe place for women, or not minorities, but generally underrepresented groups within our tech community.
I think it's really up to the people within that community to decide that for themselves. I think there should be a safe space for everyone, period, no matter who you are or what you do. But that takes time, and that's the one thing that, like the PHP women, time is not something we have a luxury of, because a lot of the things we want to do are full-time jobs. Burnout is a major factor in the open source community, and I'm not surprised when we go and do our day jobs and then go home and then do our night jobs as well. Because let's face it, if you're working in open source, you're doing 2 jobs at the same time. And that is before you even add family, kids, and, bills on top of that, which, you obviously have to manage. In fact, I only realized recently that I hadn't changed my home insurance in 5 years, and I realized why, because I never look at my bills. But it's because I spend so much time in the open source community, and that all is time related. That's why I kind of wanted to bring, the whole endeavor of PHP in its warts and all to you. Don't get me wrong, the PHP community is amazing in so many ways, just like the Python community. But the thing is, it has a lot of warts too. And I really would not like to see those warts in another community if I can help it. So if it means having to peel back the curtains and showing you these warts to warn you of what could happen if you don't sustain your community, then I'm happy to do that. Because I'd rather have at least one place in the world where there is a community of tech lovers and geeks and hackers and makers doing things that they can want to do in a safe space. So yeah, thank you so much. Just to reiterate, I'm going to be here over lunchtime. Feel free to come and talk to me, but unfortunately I will have to leave after lunch, which is a big shame. I will try and make it for the full event next year. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
Quick note.